Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. I'm Darren McBreen. It is Friday, August 29th, 2014. Here's a quick look what's coming up.
Tonight,
if you want to preserve your power indefinitely, you have to get the consent of the ruled.
Huxley and Bernays would be proud. A look at the PSYOP war. And as the Cold War heats up, Putin issues a warning. All that and more on tonight's INFOWARS Nightly News.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Yesterday, the Washington Post reported that 2 armored Russian columns have captured the southeastern coastal town of Novozovsk. Now, that's basically right there on the Russian border. They are saying that the Ukrainian military has retreated and that the Russians have invaded the Ukraine. Meanwhile, the New York Times is reporting that U.S. officials have photographs of Russian artillery moving into the Ukraine, setting up firing positions. But before we hit the panic button, let's stop, let's take a deep breath and take a good look at where all this information is coming from, because to be honest, some of this information sounds like a load of BS. Consider the source. The New York Times says U.S. officials showed them satellite images of the invasion, but they won't publish the pictures. I guess we're supposed to take their word for it. And keep in mind that this is the same New York Times reporter, Michael Gordon, who along with Judith Miller, they're the ones that wrote all those bogus articles about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Remember that? Iraq has WMDs. It's not something we think, it's something we know. And they had all these fancy graphics showing that Iraq was in possession of mobile bioweapons labs. Colin Powell, as you might recall, he used the same graphics for his UN address, which ultimately led to the Iraq War in 2003. The mobile weapons labs were totally discredited. Colin Powell himself even admitted that he was persuaded by faulty intelligence. Yeah, right. And now we know that there was never any weapons of mass destruction discovered in Iraq.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
And that was the worst president in U.S. history until now. Now, don't get me wrong, what's happening in the Ukraine is real, and it is escalating, but what we're looking at is a civil war. It is a civil war that's between the government of Western Ukraine and the Russian population of Eastern Ukraine. And once again, the United States government and NATO are up in everyone's business and caught up right in the middle. In fact, it was the U.S. orchestrated overthrow of the elected government in the Ukraine that has really pushed this crisis into high gear. Now, in an article written today that's posted right now on Infowars.com, it was written by the father of Reaganomics, Paul Craig Roberts. He says that the Russian people of eastern Ukraine are resisting the threat brought to them by Washington's puppet government in Kiev. Washington continually accuses the Russian government of supporting the people in the territories who have voted for their separation from the Ukraine. There would be no war, Washington alleges, except for Russian support. But of course, Washington could easily stop the violence by ordering its puppet government in Kiev to stop the bombing and shelling of the former Russian province. The only possible conclusion from the facts is that Washington, the Obama administration and NATO, is determined to involve Europe in a war with Russia. Now you can hit the alarm button, because this is a very serious game that they are playing. I tell you what, I think that this is a modern-day Cuban Missile Crisis. And I tell you who else isn't very happy about U.S. involvement, intervention, and the overthrow of the Ukraine, and that is Vladimir Putin. In fact, right now there is breaking news on Infowars.com that includes a feature article from Reuters where Putin says, "You better not mess with nuclear Russia." He blames the United States and the European Union for the unconstitutional removal of Kiev's former Moscow-backed president and the replacement of the Western-backed puppet. Now, here's a quote from Putin. Small villages and large cities surrounding the Ukrainian army, which is directly hitting residential areas with the aim of destroying infrastructure, it sadly reminds me of the events of the Second World War when German fascist occupiers surrounded our cities. Wow, so he is comparing the orchestrated U.S. takeover of the Ukraine with the Nazi takeover of Leningrad back in World War II. This is how serious Russia is taking this right now. They're taking it very serious, and they consider it a direct threat. Putin even went as far as reminding everyone, and I'm going to quote him again here, "I want to remind you that Russia is one of the leading nuclear powers." So a modern Cuban Missile Crisis indeed. Meanwhile, in northern Syria, a Dell computer has been captured from ISIS, and the content discovered on the hard drive is a vivid reminder that jihadists are hard at work acquiring weapons of mass destruction. In an article titled "Found, the Islamic State's Terror Laptop of Doom," the Syrian rebel group claims to have captured an ISIS laptop containing lessons on how to make bubonic plague bombs. And as Joe Biggs has discovered, ISIS is not going to be content on terrorizing U.S. interest abroad. No, they want to bring the war home right here in our own backyards.
I'm Joe Biggs with INFOWARS.com, bringing you breaking news about the ISIS terrorist group that's now operating on our southern borders. That's right. We've been talking about this for a long time. Obama's had this entire planned invasion into our country by illegals, taking Border Patrol away from their jobs and leaving these huge, wide-gapped areas open. Now we have news from Judicial Watch. They have gotten sources from the intelligence community and law enforcement that ISIS is now operating in Juarez, Mexico. If you don't know where that is, it's right across the river from El Paso, Texas. Now, in El Paso, Texas, FBI has a headquarters there. We have Fort Bliss, which is one of the largest military installations in America. Inside there, they have EPIC, which is an El Paso Intelligence Center, where there's a lot of high-ranking officials who work with the Border Patrol, CIA, things like that. That is a huge threat, and they're picking up radio chatter where they're saying that there is a threat that is imminent, and they're going to carry out an attack on the border, and that it is coming very soon. Think about this. This is what we've been telling you since day one when we started covering this whole border fiasco, that this is a huge national security issue. These guys can essentially just hop across an open area, and what they're talking about doing is bringing in VBIEDs. If you don't know what that is, it's a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. Now, I've encountered these many times in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've seen the videos. You've seen it on the news. They can demolish a building in seconds. Someone gets in the car, drives it into its target, and levels it out. When I was in Afghanistan, I should say, I was at a place called the Coast Province. There was a district right above me called Sabari. Sabari got completely leveled by a dump truck that had explosives in it, and it sent out a shock wave that could be seen from miles and miles away. Huge, huge amount of destruction, chaos. That's what they want. We're spending money on building these huge Border Patrol facilities, and yet we're not putting money on the border where it belongs, fixing the fences, getting more Border Patrol agents out there doing their job instead of worrying about these kids. And don't forget, Janet Napolitano and Harry Reid have said that our southern borders are as secure as they've ever been. How can that be? This is an orchestrated event. We fund ISIS. We've opened the borders. This is a planned attack on the American people by these officials. And it doesn't even have to hit El Paso. It could go anywhere. Once they get across, they can go wherever they want. Because you've seen our videos when we go through a Border Patrol checkpoint that's miles away from the border. All you have to understand is, are you an American citizen? And then know to answer, yes. That's it. And you're through. You can go anywhere you want to after that, as long as you've got money to put gas in your vehicle. This is a serious, serious issue, and intelligence has picked up an increased chatter among Islamist terrorist networks approaching the 13th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. I mean, we're talking about this. This is just reiterating what we've been saying for months and months and months now. It's serious. It's so serious that they have got the commanding general at Fort Bliss. Right now, he's being briefed on this situation. That's how serious it is. I contacted my contact back in El Paso. He is the vice president of the Border Patrol Council, Stu Harris. And when I asked him, I said, do you have anything about this? He says, I can't talk about this at this time. So what does that say? It's something that they are discussing right now. It's a serious threat, and we need to keep our eyes open. I'm Joe Biggs with INFOWARS.com Nightly News. Back to you, Darren McBreen.
So scary times indeed. But is the real threat from ISIS, or is it from the globalists who created and funded these terrorist organizations to begin with?
And again, it's not our government, folks. It's globalists manipulating this, just like they funded Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Al-Qaeda in Syria as the main force. They renamed it IS or ISIS. Now the political class says, brace for terror attack. We're about to get hit by Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Highest terror level alert in England, terror level alert in New York City for ISIS, and no one's talking about who gave them the weapons. Just a year ago, we had Rand Paul saying we don't want to be the Air Force for Al-Qaeda, and Senator Ted Cruz and others. And so they had a problem. The CFR openly said, we have a problem. It's coming out that we're working with these people. What do we do? So they have this whole PR thing of, well, we can't control them, and they are good fighters, and Assad is bad, but we'll bomb them later, and we'll take care of the Al-Qaeda problem after they've taken care of Assad for us, blah, blah, blah. That's why we've given them the weapons and trained them. And then our own military came out and said, yeah, we've been forced to give them weapons and train them. And Tosh Plumlee had the Justice Department put a gag order on him. He was reporting on C-130s flying arms into the radical Islamist state, Shia folks. And then we're basically told, brace for terror attack, brace for terror attack, brace for terror attack. The Al-Qaeda threat, the IS threat, is real. But they were funded, protected, shepherded by the criminals that have hijacked our country and Europe and many other nations. The facts are in. The studies are legion. Sodium fluoride and other toxic members of the fluoride family are devastating the health and cognitive ability of the American people. So why are the social engineers adding it to the water? Simple. Dumb down the host population that the parasitic technocracy is feeding on. We may not have been able to get fluoride out of the water supply yet, but we can help to get it out of our bodies. I am extremely excited to announce the exclusive INFOWARS Life Fluoride Shield formulation, fusing 6 of the best documented ingredients from around the world to help the body remove not just toxic fluoride residues from the body, but a whole host of toxic substances. Let's take a stand against the globalists by blocking their poisons with Fluoride Shield. I use Fluoride Shield every day. Secure your Fluoride Shield and other pioneering formulations at InfoWarsLife.com today. Let's start cleansing our bodies now and support the InfoWar at the same time. That's InfoWarsLife.com. I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox Special at InfoWarsLife.com.
Aldous Huxley, the author of A Brave New World, he said in an interview back in 1958 that the social engineers of the future, they will figure out a way to enslave us by tricking us and conditioning all of us into thinking that we are actually free. This was also well thought out and researched by the father of propaganda, Edward Bernays, who in his 1928 book, Propaganda, Bernays wrote, "If we understand the mechanisms and motives of the group mind, it is now